Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Well, good morning. This is Stan in Gainesville, Florida, and today we are discussing bad ideas, a thing box, lighting over rehearsals, and focusing a boom, all on Light Talk.
And this is David, coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers.
Brothers, today we're really, truly brothers.
Yes, no sisters today. And welcome everyone to episode 185. And first of all, welcome back, Steve. It's good to have you back, man.
Yeah.
We want to thank our Lumen sister, Ann McMills, for sitting in for Steve last week. So that was a lot of fun. So
Always good to have Ann in the family.
Absolutely. And if you like, that was actually a very fun episode. That was episode 184. Check it out.
You were in a particularly good mood, I thought.
Yes, I was, and now I am normal.
Well, that's a question.
My normal, cynical self.
That's
I was in a very, very good mood.
You were.
So, first of all, before we get started today, Zach Boivray, who's our bass and guitar player for the Luminoids, he posted this great video on the Light Talk Facebook page, and it's called Jacob Collier Plays the Same Song in 18 Increasingly Complex Emotions. And what's about, it's this amazing keyboard player, Jacob Collier. He plays and transforms a familiar tune through a variety of different emotions. Now, this is something that I do with my students, and I think this would be great because if you can imagine doing this with light instead of a piano, I think you'd get some very interesting things happening. So check it out. It's like a 20-minute video, and again, it's on the Light Talk Facebook group page. So, guess what time it is?
News time.
News time, right. Okay, a few things happening this past week. First of all, bad news from Broadway. Broadway announces that they are delaying opening now to June 1st.
Oh, those pansies.
Yeah, yeah, right.
They need to get tough like gators and get back in the classroom and everybody breathing on everybody.
They need to be macho men like Donald Trump now. That's his latest song when he comes out for his rallies. They play Macho Man.
Oh, my.
And I think today he said that he wants to kiss everybody at the rally.
I heard
this
that.
Is really getting disgusting. I'm sorry. That's offensive. But anyway, that's some bad news for everybody. And we just hope that we can hang in there for another 4 or 5 months and hopefully things will get a lot better. We're all in it together. Also in the news today, Italy is shutting down again.
I just heard a brief about that. I'll have to do a little
they're
reading
basically
tonight.
shutting down again. It's gotten so bad again.
The whole country?
Yeah, the whole country. And
geez.
more shows being canceled, obviously, although they never rescheduled my shows. I think I have a show there coming up in November of next year. So we'll see how long that stays on the books. So we'll find out. And on a very happy note, to end, instead of these two terrible things, we would like to congratulate Ann Valentino on her retirement.
She's graduated.
She is finally graduated.
From lighting control school.
Well, for people who don't know, Ann's a major engineer, inventor, just creative person who created so much for the industry, especially in moving light consoles.
Lighting controls.
Lighting controls. And she ended up finally being a consultant, or I guess she was full-time at ETC, really.
Yeah, I think so.
But she worked for a long time at Verilight and then a few other places. So anyway, congratulations, Ann Valentino. We have Ann on one of our earlier
interviews
episodes.
With Sarah.
We interview her with Sarah.
Yeah.
So again, congratulations, Ann, and from
Mazel
the Lumen,
tov.
and from the Lumen Brothers and Sisters, thank you. So let's get started. Steve has our first question.
Yes, it comes from Virginia, and a gentleman by the name of Lenny writes, I keep hearing about a thing box. What is that, and how do I use it? Well, a thing box has been around for a long time. One of the problems, I think, with young designers is they break their design process into a series of kind of hurdles. And so they go running along and they jump a hurdle and they go, that's done. And then they move on to the next hurdle, then they jump that. And sometimes that is a bad thing because it's not really a series of hurdles. It's a series of connected steps. So a thing box was developed with the idea that as you gathered research for your project, you actually physically put that research in, I don't know, a shoebox. And so when you get around to where you're starting to develop the light plot, the idea is you get that stuff out and you put it on your drafting table. You don't put it on a computer. You don't put it on your cell phone, but you actually get it out. So maybe in your thing box, I don't know, you're doing Death of a Salesman, and you put a coffee mug in there. And that coffee mug...
Keys to the car.
...brings up a very specific idea, whether it was a color you were going to use, or it helps you connect with your research. So the research is connected to you throughout the entire process while you're drafting. And the idea is it's visual. You look at it and you go, I remember why I picked that red can of soda. I like that color red. Or it's just to make you not ignore the research and then go in a different direction. You know, the same thing happens sometimes. You'll design a show and you'll put a yellow backwash in it. And then you'll get to the theater and you'll lose your nerve and go, I don't know if I want to turn that yellow backlight on. So this is an idea so that it's really fresh in your mind. I did this for a reason, and I'm going to carry it through until it either fails or it's successful. So that's a kind of an idea of a thing box.
I love hearing that.
Yeah, it's sort of like a commitment you're making, and you're attaching it to some sort of a metaphor, really.
It's really cool. Steve, you gave. I thought you gave the origins of it at the beginning of your answer, but can you go back to that? Where does it come from? Who developed it?
I did.
Oh, you did.
No,
you said it's been around for a long time. So
it's been around in Europe for 100 years. It's just there's no reason why we don't do it in America. The problem here is that we are a little too reliant on our computers, and we go, I'll find what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I'll go to Pinterest or whatever, right?
And I think you're being selective because it's not a bushel basket full of stuff. It's small things. You know, I had a costume designer I worked with who did things like this. It's kind of silly, but she would sew a little heart into the costumes of the actors that, the play she was doing. Audience never saw it, but, she just put little things in there that were personal to the actors while she got to know them and while she was working with them. And often it was a little heart she would sew into their costumes. I think, we're artists, and I think we have to connect to our art. And so there's different ways of doing it.
Like three-dimensional objects that have something to do with your design, and
yes.
And it personalizes the idea, which is very interesting. I never heard of that before.
Well, again, you select things for a reason. You already do this. One of the good things for a student to do with this is that it just keeps it immediate. I picked this for a reason, and I need to look at it again and go refresh your memory as you're drawing that light plot. Or your research is important, and it stays with you all the way through opening night, as opposed to some point in the process you go, research is over. I'll do something else now for a while.
Hannah in the Old West writes, how do you focus a boom? Boy, this is one of those, the way this is phrased, it's like it needs like a rim shot. With my hands, with an electrician, I don't know, softly, not too loud. How do you focus a boom? Well, when I saw this question, I thought, well, which fixture are we talking about? So a boom, meaning a sidelight boom traditionally in a wing for dance, a box boom, a boom on a boat. a boom on a sailboat. There's so much, but I'm going to assume.
I bet Hannah means a boom and a dance.
I think that's what she means.
Probably
too.
A high side, a head high, and a kicker.
That's what I'm thinking too. So I would start at the top, right? And I have my logic there. And I would, depending upon how many fixtures I had to get across the stage, I would usually go the far quarter line with my narrowest beamed fixture, my center line with my medium beam fixture and the near quarter line with my widest beam fixture. And I would set that on me as the target where I think is appropriate. I would do cuts depending upon, I certainly want to leave my top cuts as open as I can because people get lifted up in ballet and dance. I want to make sure the height is okay. I want to check the masking. And then I probably run the edge so I can get a nice blend into the next fixture and try and get as smooth a wash as I can out of 3 fixtures that might be coming off the top of the boom.
Wait, where's your upstage cut, Stan? That's important.
I would probably, if there's a scrim, I would be cutting off the scrim and into that fourth
Well, they're
wing.
usually legs. If you're in the lane 1, let's say you're in 1, where's that upstage cut?
For me, let me visualize myself doing that probably the onstage edge of the opposite wing foreleg, I think.
Which one? The top? Are we still talking about the top light?
Yeah. No.
I don't think so.
No. No. Is this a quiz?
Why don't we do your far shot? You're standing downstage right. The
yeah.
light is coming from stage left. You're
Yeah.
on your quarter line, and you're saying, hit me here.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, got it. And which cut are we talking about?
Any cut. All your cuts.
Well, the downstage cuts into the fire pocket. The top cut, I probably walk over to the nearest leg and raise my hands and go above that. Okay, and then the upstage cut, I probably put my hands out and I bring it in to where I think I would bring it in to where the leg meets the scrim. Or depends. It depends. If I want lane control, I might bring it into the second wing.
So you're saying that you would probably take your downstage cut to the fire pocket,
Yeah.
and your upstage cut to the face of the second leg.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then shins.
So wait a second. We haven't done the center shot yet. So to do the center shot, you'd be either center or right 2, left 2, probably right in the middle of the lane. And you would obviously put the hot spot there. You would take your downstage cut into the pocket. And here's your choice. You can either bring your upstage cut inside that first leg, right? And then just take the top cut to hand high so that it blends into the far shot. Or you could open up that upstage cut and then bring in your top cut right to the bottom of the leg. That way you can actually blend upstage with the center shots. And how would you do the near shot, Steve?
The near shot of the high, or
The near shot of the top 3. Yeah.
well, I use 2 lights. So I'm an old Joyce person. Mm-hmm. So the booms there have 4 lights at the top, head highs. You have a warm and a cool. Then they have 2 on the escort level and 2 on the kicker level.
Yeah.
So for that, let's say the warm high shot, I would be shooting my near shot to probably eighth or quarter line. And the far shot, I'd be shooting somewhere just past center line.
Yeah.
Then I would trim to the fire pocket. Depends on what I'm trying to do. If I need alley control,
Right.
which I usually didn't. If I did, I would hang lights for that. But if I needed alley control, I would actually cut off the face of the first leg. But typically, I would leave my stuff open to just off the face of the second leg.
Yep.
I never have more than 1 light hitting a leg.
So if you don't need alley control, what's really interesting is when you go and start doing your second and third and fourth booms, like on the second boom, you would actually take that downstage cut and open it all the way to the pocket. And you would do the same with all 3 of those lights. Probably you wouldn't be able to do it with the near shot because you may not be able to get around the leg, but you would like open it up so that you get better blending as the dancers move down stage. Again, if you don't want to have alley control. And then obviously for your third boom, you would open up that downstage cut to the second leg. Again, you never hit any legs from the front. You can hit them from the back.
Well, it's the alley control question. That's exactly what I was saying in the first. If I'm looking for a wash and I don't need alley control, I might open my upstage cuts too, depending upon what I'm doing.
Well, it also comes down to if who is this? Hannah? Is Hannah doing one dance or is she doing an evening of dance?
Right.
So it's hard for an evening of dance to all have alley cuts. It's unlikely they'd need that kind of control.
Exactly right.
But what about your kicker? What's the most important shutter for your kicker?
So for me, here's what I want. I want a mirror embedded in the deck and reflecting up out of it so there's no fixture on the floor. But you know what? Okay, let me do the standard and then I'll tell you my dream. But if it doesn't, my dream doesn't really work. So yeah, standard is you get that sucker as low to the floor as you can. Now, of course, that bottom shutter's coming out, so you really can't get all the way to the floor. But there's a trick around that too that maybe Steve knows about. So I would basically get it as low as I can. I usually stand somewhere between near quarter and center, and then I sort of put the center of the beam on my hip. Right? Then I'm going to do as parallel as I can to the curtain line, downstage into the floor pocket. I'm going to walk over to the opposite wing, to the far wing, stay just on stage and raise my hands, right? Or maybe in my case, I get on an apple box and then raise my hands and then shut down. Or at least I will cut to the border. So I've got as much height as I can as I come back towards the light, right? And then, of course, the pièce de résistance is how do you cut off the floor so you have what Gene Rosenthal, I think, called magic shins. So I don't want to have any light bleeding on the floor, so I'm sharp, right? And I'm trying to cut off just from the floor into the opposite wing, which is always really difficult depending upon how good your light is. Now, one trick that I tried that I wish it would work better, that doesn't work as well as I'd like, is I think Jules Fisher invented these things called beam benders. Now, in this case, you can't use two shins, and there might be a better solution with two shins for this. And I'm curious to hear what Steve has to say. But we have these beam benders where the fixture actually points down into a mirror. The mirror can kiss the floor. You can place the beam on the mirror where you want it, do your upstage, downstage, and top cut, but then use the mirror to make the bottom cut because it's so razor sharp. It's actually better than the shutter. And the cool thing about that is whenever you push shutters in, you lose light. So when you use that mirror, the light's getting out on the stage, so it tends to be brighter. Those are sort of my ideas. And then I've seen some really clever uses of people using double shins, right? And I'm not really an expert in that, but maybe somebody else is.
So what's the rule of thumb for boom placement? How far do you place your boom off stage?
Well, I think isn't primarily sightline driven, right? I want to get it as far on stage as I can, but being hidden, right? And usually my downstage booms, I want to come as far down as I can. And my upstage booms, I tend to want to be, I use Steve Shelley's method and be as upstage as possible. And then the other two are more malleable, like wings 2 and 3. But in terms of on stage, off stage, I want to be careful about dancers coming into the wing at high velocity and not banging into them. But I think if I go back too far, I get a natural cut from the leg, and I don't want that. I want to have control over the cut. And I've got to deal with the sight lines, right? I don't want people sitting on the sides of the auditorium to be looking into my fixture. And I would like to maybe sometimes a half hat on the downstage, which helps.
The answer is 6 to 8 feet.
From where?
So take, let's say you have a 40-foot wide proscenium.
Okay.
So center line to the onstage edge of the proscenium is how far?
20.
Okay, add 6 to 8 feet onto that. So 26 to 28 feet off center.
Sounds reasonable.
For a 40-foot opening.
Yeah, sounds reasonable to me.
That gives your beam an opportunity to get to its potential beam spread. Yeah,
to get the spread. That's true. We tried for a while at UF. We bought some of those ETC 70-degree units.
Spreadomatics?
Yeah, spreadomatics. And the problem is that we have found with them as we try the experiment is that when you shutter them, that you get a smiley face. You can't get a nice clean edge. So we sort of gave up on that.
So Cindy in California writes, how do you light over rehearsals in a safe and well thought out manner? I listened to your show last week and you were all talking about this, but I can't imagine doing it with all that chaos. What are the techniques that you guys use? Well, Cindy, I think you sort of answered it in your question in a safe and well thought out manner, which means that you need to think it out. You need to plan ahead. There are certain techniques that I use First of all, communication is very important. You have to tell the stage manager what you're planning on doing in that rehearsal. Organize with the stage manager when they need light and when you can start working over it. Because a lot of times a stage manager will say, well, we have this fight call, so we need full stage light for like the first 15 minutes. All right, and then we're going to be rehearsing some scene shifts, so we'd like to be in the scene shift light. First, we'll do it in work lights, then we'll do it in the actual stage lighting, and then it's a matter of working over whatever they're going to be rehearsing that night. And if you're just lighting the show, if you're just beginning lighting the show, you got to be real careful. You can never black out the stage because you're going to have actors and singers on stage, and you have a lot of control, and you could really hurt someone if you black out the show or you black out the stage. So you always want to make sure that there's always light on stage. So one of the things I do, I either run some work lights on at all times, or I'll go ahead and park some channels that will give safety light, maybe a blue backlight or something like that, so it never goes dark. You really have to be careful. You get some people really pissed off at you. If you're doing an opera or a musical, make sure you park the conductor lights. Never take those out too, or else the rehearsal stops. Make sure orchestra lights are always on. Obviously, conductor lights, like I just said. Also, when you're lighting over a show, you really have to be careful and make sure that you always warn people when you are going darker. So tell the stage manager when it's going to happen and wait for the stage manager to tell the actors and they will acknowledge it. Or you just yell out, going dark or going darker, never going black. You can always write blackouts in preview, so there's no reason to actually write a blackout on stage. Don't make that mistake. Also, one thing that I do is I have conventions. I break out the show into conventions of what basically the scene lights are going to look like, what the musical numbers may look like, what the transitions will look like. So once you start lighting those, write down the cue numbers. You should have them already preset in a cue sheet, and then know that when you come back to a book scene that using the same set, then go ahead and restore that cue and just record it as the new cue. Then you can work over it to make it different from the previous book scene. Make any different adjustments. Maybe it's nighttime instead of daytime. Got to change the window light or something like that, right? So it's all about being efficient and getting something on stage. Because the bottom line is you want to get as much recorded as possible because you can always tweak it during the following dress rehearsals. So those are a few techniques that I use.
Well, I would say there's two things that Cindy could do. The first thing is I have my students prepare the first 10 light cues before the rehearsal starts. They need some place to go. So it's Q1, preset, Q2, house to half, Q3, house out, Q4, lights up. Get the first 10 in so you can kind of get a rhythm, and there's something there that you can edit and work over. And then as you move beyond that, you're flying a little bit by the seat of your pants. But it comes down also to having a really efficient magic sheet. And it sounds kind of crazy, and I don't do this all the time. But what I've found, let's say you have a backlight system with 9 lights in it. Put that on group 1, right? Then take your 9 backlight systems and think about them as 3 alleyways. Upstage, midstage, downstage, going left to right. Then you have 2, 3, and 4. Then, one more time, think about them going upstage to downstage, left, right, and center, 5, 6, and 7. So you got this big old nasty magic sheet, but you can be really surgical. You can say, let me have group 9 or group 1 at full. If you just want, center and stage right on, you can say take group 7 out. So you can very quickly turn things on and off. The other kind of trick is when you set up your moving lights. And most people will set their lights up. Think of the stage as a checkerboard. So you focus every light into each square on the checkerboard on stage. And then you can move lights really efficiently. One of my friends who's a fanatic does her checkerboards in 2-foot square sections.
Wow.
And that's pretty intense.
That's intense.
But the thing about that is when she's in there adjusting lights with the company, a light is never moving very far. she's not off the mark where she has to take something from left to put it right, but she may have to move it a foot or 2 feet to where the new chair placement is, so she can very easily slide that light over and update the cue. So part of being able to light over a rehearsal in a safe, and that second part, well thought out manner, is you have to have your preparation when you go into it. You have to treat it differently than what you're doing with some walkers on stage. Once we kind of committed to living in the 21st century here in Texas, once a year we do an all moving light show. It could be, you pick it. It could be Macbeth. It could be Look Homeward Angel, but it's going to be all moving lights. And the time that you save in focusing conventionals.
Oh, God, yes. Yeah.
You can apply that time to prepping and programming and setting up your console.
Sure.
So it takes us the same amount of time. We're just, I set aside a day to build presets. Mm-hmm. And we come in about 10 o'clock and we leave about 4 o'clock. We have lunch, but we set aside a day to build presets. Students usually set aside about 3 days. And that's because they're also experimenting. Mm-hmm. They're thinking, oh, maybe I need this, maybe I need that. So the prep work you can do, it's really important. It's the same thing in rock and roll. The idea is that you try to light 3 songs a night. When you're in rehearsal, you want to bump out 3 songs at every rehearsal. You don't want to fall off that mark. If you can do more, that's great. But 3 is a pretty good. 3 and 4 hours is a pretty good time. The hardest thing about this is, whether it's a student or whether it's a professional, is getting your presets right. Mm-hmm. And then not just dragging lights around to get them to do something,
Absolutely.
But to work off of presets. And you've really got to go back and check this so that you don't have 11 lights moving clockwise and 1 light moving counterclockwise, because that is just the dickens to fix.
I think what Steve just said should be a law. That's right. Well, guess what?
What?
You are listening to Light Talk, and today Light Talk is sponsored by
Shady Virtual Imaging. Are you bored with Zoom faculty meetings? Are people onto your shenanigans when you turn off your camera and that stupid still image of you and your cat makes your colleagues believe that you're really not paying attention? Well, the good people at Shady Virtual Imaging bring to you a new product that will fool anyone into thinking that you're actually there. Shady Virtual Imaging presents Zoom Loops, are virtual interactive video loops that will instantaneously respond to all the insanity that your colleagues are spewing. How do we do it? Well, the software in Zoom Loops actually listens to what your colleagues are saying, processes it through an anti-education filter, and automatically manipulates your image to respond accordingly. Smiles, groans, headshakes, and laughter are only the basic responses that Zoom Loops creates. Our advanced reaction package also includes sneezes, face palms, spitting, and loud gaseous discharges. If someone says something particularly outrageous, Zoom Loops will turn your image into a max headroom, shaky, distorted video clip, guaranteed to get a laugh. Wow, David, how did you do that? And if you're in the mood for some crazy hijinks, our peripheral package displays strange people walking behind you in your house. This can include neighbors, celebrities, and South American dictators. Do you want to be the hit of the faculty meeting? Every few minutes, a Looney Tunes cartoon is played. Your colleagues will love seeing Yosemite Sam chasing Bugs Bunny. Faculty meetings were never this much fun. All this happens while you are actually out front on your porch sipping a margarita. Another faculty meeting? Ha! I'd rather be drinking. So stop wasting your time at those endless and fruitless experiences of perpetual pontification. Spend your time much more productively with Shady Virtual Imaging's Zoom Loops. If Trump can get away with it, so can you.
all of that and... No, that's the wrong line.
That's going on. That's going on. We're at the end of the show. We're at the end of the show.
See, subconsciously, I want this show to end. And now, back to Light Talk.
Well, the sounds of those crazy ducks tell us that once again it's time for another installment of Let's Talk About. And today's Let's Talk About subject is, when working in academia, how do you deal with faculty members who are more interested in producing the best production possible instead of focusing on offering the best opportunities for the education of their students? Gentlemen?
So we have a new strategy. We are purporting this concept. The productions are the students' laboratory, and we are not showing up. It's the students' lab. So this is changing for us. This is changing for us in our selection process. The directors no longer choose the plays. The committee chooses the plays. The director of the school is assigning the directors. And I've been told, I'm not on the committee anymore, that everything from the past is gone and it's a new paradigm.
Someone has to look at everybody and say, you're going to be in show number 1 and you're going to be in show number 2. Who is that?
I think they're working on that because what I heard the other day from a meeting from a colleague is that the argument that we have to do like this extraordinary number of productions was to give students opportunities to get on stage, but they've looked at the data and the data shows that the same students get casted over and over and over again. So they are going to, I don't know how they're going to do it, but apparently they're going to develop a system where that changes.
Well, let's look at this slightly differently. It's too late to save my shoes, but my watch is up high. How do you deal with directors who are more interested in product?
Exactly. That's the question.
Than process.
Right.
So what you're saying has nothing to do with product or process. It's not good or bad. It just doesn't address product versus process.
No. So what we're doing is there's the intention, and then there's the concrete action. Is that right now in our digital theater we have stated that that the emphasis is on process and product is attenuated. It's a fancy word for lessened. And that is a culture change, Steve. And it's not going to happen overnight. But I think what happens is when enough people on the faculty and the students start to behave differently, it changes the culture. So you can't change it with the rule. You can't change it with a policy. You change it by culture shifting. And that happens, like any good politics, a few people at a time until you have critical mass. So we have a whole new generation of faculty who will have a different perspective. So
until their tenure is based on the quality of the shows they do there.
Well, we're pulling that out of. We've actually. Let me finish because I'm glad you said that, David. So recently in our bylaws, that was stated that was creative activity for the directors, and the new associate dean, who I like, who happens to be a lighting designer in a past life, sent it back and say, this will not get you tenured at the University of Florida. So we are removing that their directing work at our school is a line item for its teaching. It's not creative activity, will not get them tenured.
This is how you change it. You have the acting faculty cast the shows. They know the students a lot better than the director. In a lot of cases, we have guest directors come in. All they can see is the talent of the actors themselves. And they're not necessarily targeting the casting. And casting, remember, this is a laboratory. We all admit that. And that's what we strive for. So we're trying to create the best opportunities possible for the students.
That's right.
It's a total sea change, a different paradigm, but it must happen.
But you can't. Well, there's two things. You're talking about casting, and Steve talking about product versus learning.
No, it is the same thing, because the goal is to put the student in the role that is most appropriate for their needs. It's the same thing when we're assigning designers. We may not put the best design student that we have on the musical just because we want to make that musical fantastic. No, that student already knows how to do that musical.
That's right.
So you're going to place a student with maybe less ability, but more opportunity, more possibilities to shine on that and to learn. They're going to learn a lot more on that musical than that student who already knows how to do musicals. Mm-hmm. And that's the pressure that we get all the time.
That's true too.
And casting is the same way.
That's right. Agreed. We don't disagree, David.
For me, product versus process is product gets in the way when everybody wants the best costume they can have. Everyone wants the best choreographer they can get. They want the best show they can have. And so all of a sudden, universities like to think they're little mini rule art houses, and they're all heading off to Broadway. And they forget that they're a teaching institution.
Right.
So product versus process, it's very hard to, I think, to tear the two apart. You know, when I was really young and started teaching when I was 30, I thought product was important. And as I got old, I thought you could have both product and process. And as I got older, I realized process was much more important in a university environment than product. But, you know, you are, maybe Florida's unique. It's a hard world because the provost comes and sees the show. And it could be the best process in the world, and he fell asleep. The dean comes and sees the show. Do I really want to spend $20,000 on that production? Maybe their budgets are a little too high for what I'm seeing. I mean, process and product, that's a death trap at a university. What do you honestly think, Stan? Do you honestly think it's going to make a difference? Or do you think it is simply
I think I really feel a sea change here. I am how should I say, cautiously pessimistic. Like, I don't believe it because I've heard it before. Because I think the points you make, Steve, are very rooted in human nature. And I think you used the right word when you said it's very difficult to untangle the two, process and product. But I am hearing my new faculty, my costume designer, my sound designer, my projection designer, my production manager, my new chair, who's not that experienced on the production side of things. I'm hearing it from the new directors, the new dance faculty are all saying, we have to make this sustainable and we have to put the students learning first. They are getting it. And I think if the bylaws change, which were kicked back from the dean's level, that the weight of your production that you do at the school as an assignment is a teaching load. And I do think at UF, now we're sort of fortunate now. We're pretty big now. And resources, even in the COVID, we're only experiencing a 2% cut. It's not going to affect any faculty. And there seems the ability, we have performance faculty, directing faculty who are able to go out for longer periods of time now and have their courses covered. We have a stable of adjuncts. So I think it's not going to, I'm not going to be here for that change. But if it does happen, it will make me feel like the sacrifices that I made were not for naught, and it happened. So I have to, because I'm by nature an optimist, but I do have grave doubts about it. But I would love to see it happen. It's the right thing for the students. And as we now are engaging in our curriculum reform process, we've thrown everything out the window, and so we're starting from scratch. And so we're being told by my colleagues who are on the selection committee, the play committee. We're right now grappling with how does the curriculum and the teaching that we do connect to what we put on stage in a better, smarter, putting the student at the center, not the faculty of that whole process. So I'll let you know how we're going to be doing this all year, and we're going to put it forward next year, and hopefully it goes through, and then we'll see if the shift occurs. All I can do is pray that it does. It's the right thing for the students.
All right. Well, Stan has the last question of the day.
Kathy in Clarksville. Hey, isn't that a song from the Monkees, Clarksville, Train to Clarksville? Kathy in Clarksville writes, how do you recognize a bad idea when it's your idea? What a great question.
Usually someone turns to you and says, that's a really bad idea, David.
Well, one is you don't let your ego get in the way, and to be egoless as much as you can. And I think back to, there's a guy, his name, Gerald Friedman. Gerald Friedman.
We know Gerald Friedman.
I bet you guys do. The famous director, and then became head of North Carolina School of the Arts, and was the first person in history to have his name in a box on a Broadway program for making chaos out of the tribe that was making hair. I got to have dinner with him once in Kearney, Nebraska, because he came as a guest guest. I forget exactly why. He was a guest. And one of my colleagues asked him a wonderful question. And then he gave a wonderful answer. And the question was, how do you, Mr. Friedman, remain objective about your work? And I thought that was a really astute question. And I'm now trying to remember the answer. But
Brilliant.
That was a great lead up. And the clouds parted, and I heard the angels singing.
Well, give me a second for my brain cells.
Gene turned to me and he said, "Stan, are you going to eat that roll?"
He said, "Stan, never start a land war in Asia."
Well, I'm just trying to stimulate my brain cells now to answer this question about what Jerry Friedman said. And I think he said something to the effect of, you have to get away from the work. You have to turn off your own sort of love about what you did and look at it as if you didn't make it and make a judgment about the idea. And so I think it's very, very difficult. And he said that as well. That is probably one of the hardest things for any artist to do. But in theater, we're lucky because you're not standing in a studio or a recording studio or an art studio or a sculpture studio and you are standing back looking at your work and there's nobody else there. It's you, right? And you've been loving on that thing by yourself for a long time. Then you call your spouse in and say, "What do you think?" And they tell you, "I don't know." And you get all depressed. But in theater, we're constantly getting another point of view. So I think if I was to crystallize it, is to value the response of others to your work. Oh, and you know what? Also, and recognizing that, and one more thing, recognizing that stating a bad idea might spurn somebody else to riff off of that and come up with the brilliant idea. And if you didn't say your bad idea or uncensored idea, or you didn't judge it, you just blurted it out, and it might have been bad, but somebody else goes, "But what about this?" So you might have helped spurn the brilliant idea by inspiring someone else to say something that you all go, "Wait a minute, yeah, that's even better than what, that's even better, or that's more correct."
I still like the idea of having a moron meter at the tech table, so that everyone knows it's a bad idea right at the moment. Like big big lights flash and buzzers go off. Say, "He's a moron."
Well, I thought it was a serious question.
It is a serious question.
It comes down to product versus process.
It always does come back to that.
Doesn't it always?
Well, the rugged sounds of the Luminoids tells us that once again, you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on Spotify, iTunes, Google, YouTube, LiveDesignOnline.com, and just about every other podcast site out there. Check out our website on lighttalk.org for future guests, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way, you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you do decide to litigate, the law firm of Fleck, Flock, Flare, and Glare and their paralegal, I Am Schnoot, will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Gainesville, and from deep in the heart of Texas.
And be sure to join us next week when we talk about more happenings in our crazy industry.
All that and a new sponsor.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
We'll see you all next Saturday morning, so adios from Light Talk.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Doodles.